Welcome everyone back to Sugar Free League, back for the finals. Now we are going into Murk Nimbus 7-0 against Big Black Clocks, the team that nobody thought was going to make it all the way to the finals, yet here they are taking on the supposed favorites. And after last week, I honestly think that they can do it.
Oh yeah, last week, we definitely had BBC as the underdog. This is a team of high plats and a high gold player going up against diamond teams regularly, and yet they've made it to the finals through clear, decisive team shot calling and honestly, a lot of topside pressure throughout every series. The solo laners and jungle for BBC have been popping off these last few games. I'm excited to see how they match up against Boone, Drops, and Shadowy Figure.
You know, I had the honor of talking to Oven Johnson last week after their win over Handsome Esports, and he straight up said that, you know, solo rank doesn't matter. They're just a better team, and that there is a conference gap that is going to be on display in this finals game. And I mean, the bans are kind of going the way we expected for this. Gragas and Sejuani, they're targeting Drops on his very versatile and very mobile jungle picks, taking away the Thresh from Dr. 2, who one-tricks it on solo queue. But over on Murk Nimbus, they are only targeting that mid lane. Victor, Syndra, Vladimir, gone.
Yeah, they do not want strong solo laners going over to BBC. We saw last series just how powerful Oven Johnson was on that Vladimir, practically 1v9ing game 1, picking them up one of their crucial wins in their 3-2 victory last weekend, and then also making sure that Electrocute doesn't get his Syndra. Two of the wins, actually, I'd say, were pretty much solo carried by him. So Nimbus are not really looking for standard OP bans, but rather they just want to hold down the champions that really elevate the skill level of BBC, and sometimes against a lower elo team, that's the most advantageous way to take it.
And honestly, this is the best played draft that I've seen thus far. Murk Nimbus coming out with the Ornn pick, taking that away from Oven Johnson, who's comfortable on it and likes to take that. Nautilus was pretty much thereby also's one trick all the whole series against Handsome Esports. But we see over at Big Black Clocks, they're taking away the misfortune that we're so used to seeing Kali on. These guys, you know, this is a chess match. The game has already started.
But one of the things that we have to remember is how much Smurf Ginger was reliant on Misfortune, being able to move around the map, being able to just kind of sack lane and not have to worry about it and still be relevant in the late game. And now Kali is saying, I'm not going to, go for one of these standard Aphelios MF matchups, Senna MF matchups. I'm going to push you in the early and mid game, and I'm going to make you make mistakes. He's picking up the Lucian, a lane-dominant ADC, especially when compared to that MF. But MF Leona, if you do go behind against this lane towards the mid game, you are never safe. The combination of Leona's pick potential and Misfortune's damage is pretty much lethal to any squishy.
Yeah, and a lot of what we saw in the last week's game was Smurf Ginger really excelled on something like Xayah. Something that has that reset if you miss position or if they try to punish you based off of where the team fight's going. So I was expecting a Xayah or an Ezreal. And so this Misfortune pick, to me, speaks a lot about his confidence going into this game and going into this bot matchup. But Big Black Clocks are still targeting that jungle, taking Zac away from Drops now as well. And this 5th ban, Vel'Koz being picked away from Boone.
Yeah, that is one of Boone's comfort champions, and this Ornn is a flex. We've seen him play it before in previous matches, but he's always felt very confident in being able to take the Vel'Koz, especially when he has a strong front line like that Nautilus, like that Ornn, being able to just pump out damage and, show his skill on this artillery mage. But this means that likely BBC is going to be looking for the mid counter pick, so I do expect their jungle to be picked up here, and it is Hecarim. With Kayn being banned, it does force Acid off of one of his main junglers. He was blind picking that champion last series, so securing the Hecarim, which was the other jungle he played, might be crucial for BBC to stay in their comfort zone. And that being said, I think that in this counter mid pick, they have to be looking for something that's stronger early game. Set, Misfortune, even Hecarim sometimes have a hard time really impacting the game, especially pre-sex, but even a little bit after until they really come online. So I do expect something, I was going to say like a Zoe or perhaps a Kiana, something that really can pressure early, but also they have to go AP, so being able to take away this Zoe pick and secure a strong mid 2v2 shows that Murk Nimbus are really thinking this draft out.
Yeah, and Elise is honestly what I was expecting to be picked up once those further bans came through, once we saw Zach banned away and Hecarim picked up, because Drops was really dominant on this Elise in the early part of SFL, and we just haven't seen him on it since, due to the fact that the team had kind of migrated towards more of a mid to late game composition for a lot of their games. Seeing this Elise now, I'm really excited to see the response, because you're not going to be able to just get away with ganks that can't be answered by an enemy jungle. Not when you're against something as mobile as Hecarim, who's going to be all over the map, especially on Pure Acid, who, given the smallest advantage, is able to just push that into leads for his solo laners.
Absolutely, I do think that a major part of this game is going to be where the junglers show up. Pure Acid was an instrumental part of almost every single win, and even was one of the things holding back a lot of the lost games for BBC. So seeing him on this Hecarim, one of his comforts, I think is really important to note. And also, like you're talking about drops on this Elise, he loves making these early plays. He likes Rek'Sai, the Elise, these kind of champions we see on his OP.GG. So with the Elise Zoe mid 2v2 and the powerful Lucian Nautilus bot 2v2, I do expect to see drops really focus around that side of the map and maybe try and counter BBC's heavy dragon control.
Yeah, and now, of course, we're going into the actual picks and bans in the lobby. We already know where everything's going, unless we start seeing the rise of top lane Zoe meta. So, with kind of all the questions being taken out of this, what are your thoughts on the compositions? Who do you think drafted stronger, and who do you think is going to be able to actually turn this into a victory for game one of this 5-game series?
One of the things that I think is more important than just talking about who drafted stronger, but we'll get to that, is how these teams drafted. BBC drafted very much to their own strengths. They want Electrocute to be lane dominant with this Diana into Zoe. They want Hecarim, a safe jungle pick for Pure Acid, that MF Leon in the bot lane, and they want Oven Johnson to once again be on a power pick top. They're picking what they want and what they know, but Murk Nimbus are kind of going level 2 on them. So they're picking things that will counter how big Black Clocks want to play, but at the same time, I hope that this means that they haven't lost the strengths of their composition in all of this counterpick kerfuffle. So I do think that it's going to be about which team gets to impose their will on the early game, because then I think that both teams have the tools in the mid game to translate that forward.
Yes, certainly. And I feel one of the things I want to mention, going back to the interview that Oven Johnson had last week leading into this game, was he didn't beat around the bush. He said straight up he believes that Handsome Esports had the strongest top planer in the league, and that he was able to go one toe for toe and come out victorious. Mental boot Handsome Esports' top laner. And when asked about Shadowy Figure, he thought Shadowy Figure was good, but he didn't, again, got straight to the point. He was better. And so this is going to be our first chance to see a sort of traditional matchup, Ornn versus Zed. This isn't something where you really expect either champion to get a massive lead, not without outside jungle assistance. So if that transpires in game one, that's going to be a major calling card going into the rest of the series.
And I think when both junglers are going to try and focus around bot side, it really will highlight the difference between Shadowy Figure and Oven Johnson. And we're going to see which one does end up performing, because we were talking about how cocky Oven Johnson was, but it was for good reason. He mentally abused two top laners, forcing them to pick up a sub, and then destroyed the third in game 5. So this is not a top laner you can take lightly. You can't just look at his OP.GG and say, oh, this is another plat 1 top laner who's just snuck his way onto some team. This guy is a superstar for the big Black Clocks.
Yeah, and seeing how Electrocute does on this more assassin, more mechanically detriment character rather than what we saw last week with his more, Syndra, Vladimir, giving him more control mages or just power late game carries. It's going to be really interesting to see if he can shut down Boone, who is considered one of the mechanically more solid mid laners in this league. Honestly, we are truly about to see a matchup of the two best teams in this league, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out. But for now, while we work through the spectator delay, we're going to go ahead and go to a short break. back, everyone. Now that we are past the spectator delay, we are on game number 1 of Murk Nimbus versus the big black clocks. A lot of people have been calling conference gap, saying that the Saturday League is bigger, it's better, and it's got the black clocks. So we're about to find out whether or not that's true and whether or not Murk Nimbus can hold on to an undefeated season and actually win Sugar Free League. Lecce, I'm excited. I'm ready. I want to see how these people match up with one another. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm also excited, Dark Pie, and one of the reasons is because there is some validity to the conference gap idea. The very first week, quarterfinals, Murk Nimbus faced off against the bottom seeded team, I believe, of
Imperial
the Saturday
Black
Conference,
Knights.
the Imperial Black Knights. And they took them to 5 games, and Murk Nimbus has had just as a rocky postseason since then. So there is definitely good reason to call that out and to kind of question whether the Friday League was just that much weaker than Saturday if the bottom seed almost took off the match of the top seed, but Murk Nimbus have managed to make their way to finals, and now we're facing a team who I believe were the bottom seed or the second to bottom seed of the Saturday League, who have also made their way all the way through finals, taking down many other of the top Saturday and Friday teams in their path.
Yeah, and you are not lying. When we say that Murk Nimbus has had a rocky road in this postseason, the first series against Imperial Black Knights, they were taken to game 5. Not only were they taken to game 5, they had to reverse sweep, with game 3 coming down to quite literally just top gap with split pushing. A shadowy figure who had fallen detrimentally behind in that third game was able to just split push, break open the base, and give them the victory they needed to do the reverse sweep. In Series 2, no different. Again, Game 5, in which while they did exchange back and forth for a little while, everyone was expecting Murk Nimbus to clean up their act from the first game of the playoffs and to just dominate, but they haven't been able to do that. And so now up against the team that has made it as far as you can from the Saturday leagues, will they be able to hold strong?
And it really also reflects how, Murk Nimbus want to play this game in their keystones and want to set the tone for this series. Before we get into that, a little bit of a skerfuffle on the bot side, thereby also getting chunked out. Press the attack, providing a lot of damage after Furious Doctor just walks up and autos him. But in the extended trade, Smurf Ginger actually put out quite a bit of extra damage. Both supports now are getting dangerously low and are going to have to pot a health pot, or use a health pot.
Yeah, and one last just fun bit of trivia I want to throw out there is that Big Black Clocks didn't automatically secure their way into these playoffs. They actually had to win a tiebreaker against, I believe it was New Age Esports, in order to make it to where they could even have a chance to be here today. From then, other than Handsome Esports, they won a dominant victory in their first game within the playoffs, 3-1 over their opponents. So unlike Nimbus, who has kind of struggled since the postseason has started.
Pardon the interruption, but Drops is found, thereby also on the bot side, using the repel to get some extra distance, and in goes a Furious Doctor. Heal comes out, but First Blood goes over to Drops. It's actually going to be Smurf Ginger that falls. We were talking about how he could perhaps end up hurting his team through mispositioning mid and late into the game, but we didn't expect him to fall this early.
Yeah, and it's difficult to argue that as poor positioning, simply because it seems really like the problem there was poor warding. There was no vision to warn them that Drops was coming down. And when you're playing against an Elise, who's such an early game dominant jungle, and against Drops, who is going to try to push any advantage he has through his lanes, you have to see that coming. You have to try to ward ahead of time.
Yeah, and now Drops has the level and pressure advantage, and he's looking to double scuttle Pure Acid. Although Hecarim has the faster full clear than Elise, if she manages to get both these scuttle crabs, that's not much of a lead in the grander scheme of things. So Pure Acid trying to speed that up a little bit by taking Gromp and Blue at the same time. And we're talking about how Drops wanted to focus bot side, get early dragon pressure, try and contest the way that BBC plays the game. And he has. He's gotten his bot side a lead. Callie already picking up that call, wanting to just show lane dominance so far.
Yeah, and speaking of Hecarim having the faster clear, it's important to note that even with that gank bottom, which turned into a kill, they're both approximately equal in farm, with Elise actually edging out that Hecarim. So Pure Acid is really going to have to start doing something in a lane, because at this point, Elise now has the advantage on him that he wants. Regardless of the fact that Elise may fall off later, all she has to do is get Ornn, Zoe, and Lucian to that mid-game power spike point, and he's already begun that process bot lane.
And then it's going to be up to Murk and Nimbus to continue to push this lead as they move into the mid-game, because BBC have, although what they make up for in skill, to put it bluntly, they really make up for that skill in terms of just excellent shot calling in team fights. It's been through team fights that they managed to take out the heavy favorites, Handsome Esports, in the semifinals match. And that's one of the things that I really want to keep my eye on, and it seems like Murk and Nimbus have also kind of scouted that out, and they want to push this before it can get to those much later game fights, when BBC can really come online, when Electrocute is able to just run himself through their backline. So we were talking about the early dragon pressure.
Excited about is those team fights, because we've talked about, you know, how great Big Black Clocks are at that late game team fighting. So is Murk Nimbus, and that's why this is going to be so exciting. I think the real difference here is going to come down to, you know, we talked about how the junglers are going to have to push their advantages in the lanes. Well, Drops and Pure Acid are also going to be two of the major deciding factors as to how these team fights play out.
100%, and Drops already picking up the first dragon of the game, Ocean Dragon, going over to him, and just a little bit of more tank action in the top lane. Oven Johnson and Shadowy Figure just been wailing on each other this entire time, and a Furious Doctor reading the misstep by thereby also as he gets bursted down. The kill goes over to Callie. That Lucian picking up a kill is not something you want to see, although it went to Elise last time. Lucian is one of those champions that if he can get rolling, he can dominate a lane, and that's one of the reasons we know Callie picked it. He wants to just style on Smurf Ginger and show that he is the better ADC throughout the entire game. So far, that seems to be succeeding.
Yeah, and it's a shame too, because Big Black Clocks weren't unaware this time. They figured, you know, Elise is going to be pathing bottom again. Their goal has obviously turned out to be, let's get bot lane ahead. But they were just too slow on the rotation. Hecarim was caught in his jungle, Diana by the Dragon Pit, and the fight was already done.
Now, you can still see Hecarim only about one camp ahead, and Oven Johnson manages to showstopper through the Ornhorn, but it doesn't seem to matter. Shadowy Figure, almost a solo kill there, despite the fancy mechanics from Oven Johnson. Shadowy Figure is the one who manages to pick up that kill with a little help from Drops.
Yeah, the set ultimate, you know, while it did sustain the fight, it did allow him to live a little bit longer. It also positioned him closer to the Elise, but at that point, I'm not sure it would have mattered. It looked, as you said, like Shadowy Figure was able to get the advantage in that fight already. And there's a very good chance he would have gotten that solo kill, but with Drops being there, able to pick up the assist, just get himself some more gold, Big Black Clocks have to find a way to start doing something, and I'm guessing that that's going to come through the form of a Rift Herald fight, or at least an attempt.
Yes, just like you were saying, and like we saw in the semifinal match, BBC are a team that thrive if they get the early lead. They seem to know how to push that and just move around the map well together and just take charge of every single move that either team makes almost. And so that's one of the things that I am not very excited for them this game. They're already down a little over 1k gold, 8 minutes into it. So if Murk and Nimbus keep up this tempo, keep BBC down, this game is going exactly how they want it. But now Drops is looking on the top side against Oven Johnson again, so he has to flash away.
That was honestly just a fantastic trade. Keep in mind, Ornn wasn't even there. That was just Nautilus roaming up from bottom because he figures, you know, at this point he can do so. And so one thing that is positive about, regardless of how this game turns out, is that neither team seems to be too negatively affected by mental. Even if BBC ends up losing this game, or even if they come back and win, Nimbus and Big Black Clocks are not the type of teams that are just going to give up and be ruined mentally from it.
Now we can see Electrocute is actually looking to contest this Rift Herald, using the ultimate, bringing down some Moonlight onto Drops. He's going to flash away, trying to use that Nimbus Cloak, but the Ignite is going to pick up that kill, going Electrocute's way. Big Zoe's Trouble Bubble ends up hitting Pure Acid, but that Rift Herald ended up going towards Drops, but he's going to pay for it with a kill. Now it's going to be all up to how he uses it to see if he can get that gold back for his team.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that was in the favor of Murk Nimbus. While getting a kill, especially getting a kill on the Electrocute, that's fantastic. That makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you can start doing stuff soon. At the end of the day, Rift Herald is going to open up not only the way to get a ton of gold from these blades, but it's going to start opening up the lanes, which is just going to allow more macro dominance from Nimbus. So they really have to play defensively right now, and they have to be ready to respond wherever Drops shows up.
Yeah, and 100% KP so far, 1, 1, and 2. Drops has been all over the map. We were talking about how we expected to see a little bit of jungle diff. Whichever jungler ended up coming out ahead early was going to be able to impact and push their team to the victory a lot easier, and that is kind of the way League of Legends is. You know, if you have that early presence and you have a good jungler, a good mid laner to manage to sustain it, the game should be yours. As Boone might have gotten caught out here, thereby also catching out, but he's in a little bit of a sticky situation, using his ultimate to try and stun Boone. Boone managed to dodge it, and Electrocute doesn't connect that Q, so can't really effectively follow up. But I do like what I'm seeing from thereby also. It means that BBC know that they want to stand up now. They want to start contesting objectives before it really gets out of hand.
Yeah, and they are starting this dragon just as you said that they would have to.
The Oran Horn comes through, and Oven Johnson is on the front line using that Grid. A Fury Stalker now has to use his stopwatch, is going lower and lower. Callie is down, and that was so much damage. Drops as well. Manages to not pick up anything so far, but there is Boone picking up something on the back end of the fight. This player is looking for even more. The Panel Star misses, which means he's going to be in a pretty dangerous situation. But with blinking health bars, BBC walk out of that fight with a kill advantage and the Infernal Dragon.
Yeah, a 3-for-1 trade is a fight anyone's going to want, and that dragon did not go the way that Nimbus was expecting. They went ahead and used their teleport, brought Ornn down, had the Ornn Horn ready to go. You know that they expected to be able to turn that fight, but Callie stepped just a bit too far up with Lucian. He got caught out immediately, locked down, and just destroyed by a combination of Misfortune Ultimate, Leona Lockdown, and Electrocute's ability to just read these team fights. At the end of the day, while Big Black Clock certainly has a fantastic team that, as you said, knows how to team fight, Electrocute really is the player that seems to put them over the edge as a finalist team. And now that he has 2 kills on himself, now that he has his first item complete, I'm really interested to see what he's able to do with that.
And although this is 2 kills on a Diana, normally that would equate to a lot more damage than an Abyssal Mask, but Electrocute going for something a little bit more defensive. He wants to survive in these fights, get better positioning towards the backline, use his ultimate for maximum damage, so that is what he's going to pick up, trying to also not get chunked out as heavily in lane as Boone, and now he's going to go in onto Drops. The Ignite is ticking him down, but he's using Nimbus Cloak to get away. Electrocute follows it up with that Lunar Rush, and Drops is actually going to get sniped by thereby also. That Leona ult picks up the kill. It seems like Tempo has been going BBC's way, and the Rift Herald, I believe, was dropped bottom, but it didn't manage to actually crack a turret, so that final plate, so much gold that Drops was looking for now, might have to wait until next game.
Yeah, not quite. Electrocute has been able to compensate for the initial jungle gap that we saw and just say, you know what? Fine, I'll do it myself. And it's come through strong. Smurf Ginger is now up with 2 kills. And while gold is still slightly in the favor of Murk Nimbus, as you said, tempo could not be more in the favor of Big Black Clock. So they're going to try to push this through either, plays in the lane, or they're just going to be waiting for this next jungle objective to come up. Either the second Rift Herald, which is huge for these teams right now, or the first Dragon of the Dragon Soul.
Yeah, and I actually expect it to be around this Dragon. Although both junglers are top, I think they're going to be resetting soon. And also, I think Callie's going to be resetting soon. He's completed his call, and he needs his first item. He needs that Essence Reaver to be able to match Smurf Ginger. And try and excel and step forward, winning these trades that right now it seems like he's been losing, or not able to take because of very much improved positioning from Smurf's Ginger, and thereby also. So we look back top lane. Pure Acid's looking for something. He has that charge. So if Shadowy Figure stepped a little bit too far up, he could have been in a world of hurt, but he manages to dodge that gank. Oh, actually, he might
or not. Pure Acid is willing to expend a lot of time up there because he knows if he gets Oven Johnson ahead, that's huge.
Oh, there's the showstopper. Now,
yeah.
in he comes. He's not going to use the charge. Shadowy Figure manages to end up dodging that one, and up come the members of Murk Nimbus. Shadowy Figure wants to extend this fight. Oven Johnson's getting chunked down. Has to use up all of his grit already, and that might not be good. Pure Acid now seems to be in a sticky situation. He has that unstoppable to get out, and he uses it, drops, does not manage to land the cocoon. And now 4 members of Murk Nimbus are top, and it seems like Electrocute knows it. He instantly goes in on Boone, manages to burn the flash.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you know, that didn't go too much in anybody's favor. Oven Johnson and Pure Acid both expending ultimates, not able to pick up anything in return.
And now, I am proven wrong as both teams, after that extended fight, seem like they want Rift Herald, and they're hovering around. But notice, Smurf Ginger and Shadowy Figure are both not with the team, so it's all going to be about what this 4v4 can do if they really do want to look for it. BBC, though, have backed off. We're going to take this chance to reset as a team and come onto the Rift stronger than before.
And I think part of that was due to, as you said, Smurf Ginger a little bit out of place. And while Shadowy Figure wasn't there either, it could have been a 4v4. It is important to not underestimate the value of that Misfortune ultimate. While Diana can be a devastating champion in her own right, she started off Abyssal Mask, and now she has Sorcerer Boots. There is no damage in her kit yet, and unless they fight perfectly, if they take out Elise or Zoe or Lucian right at the start of the fight, they're just going to get kited out and destroyed. They knew that. They understood that. And they thought, you know what? Better reset, better prepare for this dragon.
Yeah, pretty much all Electrocute's damage is going to be on those base values of his ultimate. So when it's not up, like you're saying, they're going to try and avoid anything they can. Both mid laners now are at level 11. They have level 2 ultimates, and while that's good for Boone, that's fantastic for Electrocute. We were talking about how that key tool in team fights is going to be required, but it seems like Murk Nimbus are looking for something. Now thereby also is getting chunked out, but a nice Leona ultimate means that this Lucian is not going to be able to do anything, and there is the ultimate we were talking about. Electrocute picks up a double kill, and Shadowy Figure is running for his life. Drop, sends back a cocoon, manages to land on Smurf Ginger, but to no avail. A 4-for-0 fight, but Drops is still up. He might look for either a tempo play mid or to contest this dragon.
Yeah, you know, you think that that Smurf Ginger doesn't have the best positioning? You think you're going to be able to abuse that? Well, here he is proving everyone, Nimbus and us, wrong. He not only, regardless of what the fact that a lot of that was facilitated by the engagement of Electrocute and by the ability of thereby also to sustain his own life to get that ultimate out, he was right where he needed to be to get a perfect ultimate off, so that once the combo was finished, you know, they were shredded. There was nothing Murk Nimbus could do about that. And if they continue to get caught like that, I think that is the second team fight in a row where Kali has just died before he's actually been able to contribute damage.
Exactly, and eventually, Misfortune is going to be much more impactful in team fights than a Lucian. So if Kali can't start pulling out his stops now, he might never be able to. Smurf Ginger's already 3-1, Kali down 1-2. This could be looking more and more dangerous by the minute for him.
Yeah, and now that the gold is finally in the favor of the big black clocks, my guess here is that we're not going to see the game slow down. In some games you'd expect, okay, they're probably going to try to establish some sort of ward line. They're probably going to try to build up their gold again. Well, maybe in any other situation, but Elise still has that eye, and she dang sure wants to use it.
You can already see Drops hovering around mid, and now he's caught out Pure Acid, trying to get some return damage, but Conquer is procced, actually. Pure Acid and Drops walking out with about the same percentage of health, thereby also, though, may have been caught out. He's going to be hit by that depth charge, but Kali, again! The culling is cancelled, thereby also has not let him use one of his main damaging abilities in any of these fights, but that Spiderling hitting actually is going to be pretty massive for Murk Nimbus. It means that Pure Acid is going to have to reset here, and that could be the mid-priority Drops wants to put down his Rift Herald, so it seems like he's going to just sprint there in spider form.
You know, and that does say a lot about how important Electrocute is to the ability of this team when it comes to the team fighting. When he's not there, when he's not able to get his engage, we saw another Misfortune ult, but this time it didn't kill anybody, not even Dropped, who was extremely low. And while I think that a lot of that was simply due to the fact that that was such a scrappy team fight, it says a lot that these fights that have been going so in the favor of Big Black Clocks, you know, now that they have a lead, this is the first time they haven't been able to win a fight. It ended in a tie. Both teams just walked away from one another.
Now Kali using the culling to just make sure that the Rift Herald gets at least one charge off, but it should promptly die here with its eye exposed. Although that wasn't the most ideal placement of the Rift Herald, Drops made sure that he put it where he wants to. He wants this mid lane turret gone, off the map, so his team can start moving up their vision line. But speaking about vision lines, BBC, this is a team we were talking about, loves to fight in these scrappy fights, love to push their advantage, and one of the things you have to have when you do that is sweepers and pink wards, and they have a lot of them. 7 right now in the inventory, earlier 10 when Oven Johnson had just walked into lane. So they have a absolutely commanding lead of vision right now, and they've already put down a lot. They can stay on this map and push up their vision line for at least the next 3 to 5 minutes if they really want to.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to come down to whether or not... here's the fight starting off.
Electrocute was initially caught up, and now he's just going to go onto Boone, having to flash away. Pure Acid charging in, and Boone is slowed by the Leona ultimate, is going to fall. That goes the way of Electrocute. Murk Nimbus may have bitten off a little more than they can chew. Meanwhile, Oven Johnson on the top side, he has Bork. He's winning these fights now. He's looking for Shadowy Figure, but that Billow's Breath does a lot of damage, and the Oran Horn as well. He's looking for some more. Brittle's going to meet a lot, but not if he gets Showstoppered. Bork is actually giving him so much survivability. The Grit Shield as well is keeping him alive, but it ends up going Shadowy Figure's way. An immensely back-and-forth topside fight, which eventually favors Murk Nimbus, but that doesn't make up for the sins they committed bot. Boone and Drops were looking for something, but were turned back upon, and that means BBC can just move up their vision line towards Dragon, and that's an objective that they desperately want. Their Dragons are so important.
For sure, and it's so important that Shadowy Figure won that. Right now, it's impossible at this point in the game to not begin to feel a little bit demoralized. You've lost the past 2 team fights. You think you catch someone out only to die in the bot lane because of it. At least there was an answer topside. At least Shadowy Figure was able to prove the fact that, you know what? It doesn't matter how this game's going. Ornn is still a really weird champion.
Yeah, Brittle and all that max health damage managed to take down Oven Johnson, but now we see all 5 members of both teams in the bot side, although Oven Johnson has his TP. He's opting to stay here, look for the re-engage, or just the engage instead of trying to get his TP flank. Electrocute and Pure Acid are both spotted out by a pink ward. They're going to manage to clear it, and that means more vision control for BBC around this dragon. Both teams know the importance of it to each other, and they are contesting it with every ounce of their being.
You know that Murk Nimbus just wants to get in what poke they can. They do not want a straight-up stand in each other's face and fight. They want to get this enemy team as low as possible, so that way when this fight starts, hopefully they can burst someone down and just make it a 4v5. Because honestly, at this point, that might be their only chance of winning the fight.
Boone trying to land Paddle Stars, trying to land Sleepy Trouble Bubbles, but so far nothing has connected until just now when it went onto Pure Acid. He's going to get chunked out a little lower, and the Paddle Star doesn't manage to steal it. Pure Acid smites it away. Electrocute is on the backline, and he just keeps going. This Abyssal Mass paying dividends as he's only at half health after soaking all of that damage. Boone is going to stun up Oven Johnson, but that's going to be it anyway. He doesn't get the return kill. Pure Acid seems like he's about to get caught out, but he might have gotten out of this one as well. Oven Johnson says, "You're not running away from me now, Shadowy Figure. Let me show you some conference gap." And that's going to be 4 for 0 again around the dragon after Drops had to back away.
You know, a lot of what I'm noticing from these team fights is that Boone has kind of consistently been missing his Battlestar. It's consistently going either wide or just not... It's being used in a way where it doesn't connect. It stops short short. And so I'm starting to wonder whether or not this Zoe pick is actually what they wanted to do here. Not to say that we haven't seen Boone succeed on this champion, simply to say that he's definitely not succeeding right now.
And one of the reasons is because Electrocute has been on his case. This counter pick has paid dividends for the mid laner of BBC because it's forced Boone into really awkward situations, not only in teamfights but in lane as well. Not being able to get the advantage he wants, not being able to position as kind of aggressively or forward towards these walls because he knows that Electrocute could be right behind them, and if he lands just one proc of that Moonlight, he will be Lunar rushing over the wall as soon as he does. So I think one of the reasons is not to just keep inflating Electrocute's ego, but one of the reasons BBC have been winning these fights and Boone has been shut down and Callie hasn't been able to make an impact is because of Electrocute, and thereby also their team fighting and constant disruption in these fights means that Boone doesn't have a chance to get off the damage he wants. Callie doesn't have a chance to get off the damage he wants. And so far, you know, we keep talking about the storyline. These gold plat players have been stepping up against high diamonds.
And it is important to mention that they are not just no-name gold plat players who decided, you know what, I'm feeling a diamond league this month. They actually were recent diamond players themselves. I believe all of them peaking around D2 or D1 in just the past season or two. So they are not new to this game and they know how to push advantages. These are all very, very good players in their own right.
And now they're going to start up Baron. Without a lot of traditional siege tools, this is one of the objectives that is going to be crucial for BBC as this series goes forward. Shadowfigure is actually looking for something as he is going to TP in. Ornhorn is up, and he uses it. It manages to land onto Smurf Ginger and a 4-member Ornhorn, but will it even matter? Thereby also soaking so much damage, and a Furious Doctor is running away. Bullet Time is starting to chunk out Shadowfigure, and Boone never actually managed to get damage in that fight as he was chasing down the back line. Once again, Electrocute is frontlining. Drops goes down right after he took down Callie, and Boone, although he's been unscathed this fight, he's one of the main damage dealers for Murk Nimbus. He needs to be looking for poke. He can't just look for these crazy flanks anymore.
Yeah, it feels like in a strict sense of what is the better team composition, you would look at Murk Nimbus and think, of course, this team is going to be better. They're going to be able to get some early advantages. They're going to be able to make this turn into an easy win. But time after time, we just see Big Black Clocks playing to their win conditions so well and consistently the damage sources we need to see Murk Nimbus utilize the Lucian, the Zoe, their ability to just burst people down extremely quickly. It doesn't matter because they're not living long enough to do any damage.
And now BBC have an incredible reset with that Baron recall. And they're going to come onto the map. Every ounce as strong as their 7k gold lead suggests. They will be the stronger team on the Rift, and I think it's going to be up to a Furious Doctor, Boone, and Drops to really land a more unconventional engage. It's going to be up to them to land a hook, bubble, cocoon that sets off these fights and puts them in the favor of Murk Nimbus because they don't win the 5v5 anymore. They just don't. So they need to look for something a little bit sneakier if they want to come out on top.
A little bit sneakier and on the right people. Constantly these engages have been going on the Leona on the set simply because their frontline is doing such a good job at making sure that they're the ones absorbing this hard CC and this engage. Shadowy Figure has gone ahead and decided, you know what, I won't be able to help for this dragon, so I'm not even going to bother with this dragon, and he's pushing top. They know he doesn't have a teleport, and so I'm guessing we're not even going to see a contest for this.
What that means is it actually means that Murk Nimbus is going to be looking to try and constantly aggro BBC back off the dragon and not let them take it, but BBC seem to be okay with that. They're just running right back at Murk Nimbus, forcing them off because Murk Nimbus don't actually have the tools, if that fight ends up getting taken, for them to put up any kind of fight, any kind of disengage. So this normally split push centric move really doesn't work when you have a weak Ornn in the top side, or when your bot and mid haven't gotten ahead enough. So a tower for Ocean Soul is never going to be worth it. Not even here, not even in some crazy split push reality. This Soul is another key that will just unlock the victory condition for BBC.
Yeah, we mentioned it earlier, how this Diana started off going tanky, wanted to be able to survive the team fights to allow Misfortune to get damage off, to allow Set to kind of just continuously sustain damage in the fights. But now Diana is going damage. And with the Mountain Soul and the shielding that she's going to get on top of it...
Oh, Oven Johnson! Pardon the interruption, but he just goes absolutely ham, using Bork to try and get on Callie again, but Callie's being forced off out of the fight. Shadowfigure managed to land another fantastic Ornhorn, but in comes Electrocute, down comes the ultimate, down comes the damage. Moonlight shines today, and every member but Shadowy Figure of Murk Nimbus are going to fall, and he has no Ornn to stop this push. It's going to be a 1v5, but he might not even try. He might be talking about next draft phase because something's going to have to change. 6-20, almost a 10k gold lead. BBC show up in this finals when there were a lot of doubters coming into it.
Murk Nimbus stepped in being called the favorites of this game, the favorites of Sugar Free League, and Big Black Clocks looked at them and said, who? They were able to dominate this game from the first team fight around Dragon, and then from there it was kind of one-sided. We never saw Murk Nimbus win a single fight from then on, and all this does is really hide the strength of the drafts here. We saw that Big Black Clocks were aiming directly at drops. They wanted to take away as many tools out of his kit as possible, and they were successful in doing so. Whereas, you know, Murk Nimbus wanting to shut down Electrocute, wanting to make sure that he could not be the carry his team needed, well, we just saw that it doesn't really matter what Electrocute goes on, so you might as well just try to make Boone happy at this point.
Yeah, and by disabling the Murk Nimbus mid 2v2, banning out that Vel'Koz, banning out so many of Drop's picks, that may have been the secret to locking down this team, because if Callie doesn't get ahead, he doesn't seem to be able to perform so far in postseason. It's always been game 5s where he stepped up, but it might not get there if the next 2 games look like this one.
For sure, knowing that this is the final game of their series, knowing that the postseason has all come down to this, that's a lot of stress for both teams. And so this is really not only going to be a test of their mentals, but a test of their abilities to bounce back from games like this. Hopefully, it's the only one we see this series, because a 5-game series would be fantastic. But we're going to go ahead and go into a brief break while we prepare for Game 2. Can't wait to see you guys back. back, everybody, to game number 2 of the Sugar Free League Finals. What we saw in game 1 was a dominant performance coming out of the Big Black Clocks. They decided to leave zero room for Murk Nimbus to come back, and from the very first team fight that they won around the Dragon Pit, it was kind of all done from there. So we're really excited to see how these drafts kind of change to the last game. And so far, the only change we've seen is Murk Nimbus is now taking Diana away from Electrocute, who is able to thrive on it in a pretty spectacular fashion.
Yeah, BBC keeping the same bans, wanting to lock down drops and really restrict his ability as well to go in by taking away his support's Thresh. That means that Murk Nimbus can't play as aggressively as they may like to when they pick up this champ in scrims. And Murk Nimbus do ban away the Misfortune, do ban away the Syndra, taking away some of that comfort and forcing the ADC of BBC on a different champ. But it does seem like thereby also is going to get his Nautilus back. He shocked me, to be quite honest, last series in the semifinals, Game 4 and Game 5, when he started to pick up this champion and run with it. The ability to just instantly initiate, even faster than Leona, it really helped BBC take fights that they weren't always able to before, and really force their opponents to make mistakes, and then how to exploit upon those mistakes was something that they also thrived on. So picking up this first Nautilus is something that I'm really excited for, but Murk Nimbus, that's going to be Xayah Rakan. The Nocturne has been confirmed to be Xayah. They're going for a much stronger traditional bot lane 2v2 than Lucian Nod.
Not only that, but we saw last week when they were up against Handsome Esports, the Big Black Clocks wanted to pick Nautilus and Xayah pretty often. Despite his spectacular performance last game, Smurf Ginger does have an issue with positioning oftentimes. And while it might have seemed from last game that it was Callie with the problems, maybe it's just both. I'm not sure. But now they're going Varus, who is just spectacular with built-in lockdown as his ultimate. That snare that just kind of splits up a team fight, forces you to back up, and with Nautilus, who just has so much engage and disengage potential. We see a lot of these comfort picks coming in with the Nautilus support, the Kha'Zix jungle, who was originally banned away in Game 1. I'm really hesitant to make any predictions based off the draft, only because last series the draft didn't seem to matter.
And Kha'Zix, the champion that wasn't just banned in Game 1 this series, I believe it was banned 4 of the 5 games in the semifinals, if not all 5. So Kha'Zix is Pure Acid's main. This guy, however, loves his Kayn, loves his Hecarim, so seeing him opt for the Kha'Zix instead, after seeing an ADC that can play a lot safer in Xayah, after seeing Rakan, a champion who will be able to peel off this assassin jungler quite effectively, and blind into 3 more members of Murk Nimbus, it really shows me how confident he is on it. But one of the requirements is he has to get rolling. He has to start making early plays, so I expect to see him and thereby also really unlocked onto the map.
Yeah, and this is another, Big Black Clock's exact same banning phase. They've taken away in the first rotation any and all of Drops' ability to go on his comforts, and now they're targeting Boone, taking away that Vel'Koz he's been so well known as of playing, and taking away that Wukong, who we know, shadowy figure, whenever his back foot is up against the ledge, he resorts back to the monkey god.
Yeah, BBC with a pretty big amount of research seemingly coming and taking away a lot of comforts, a lot of competitive picks that these players don't necessarily play in solo queue. And Murk Nimbus do take the Vladimir, making sure that BBC can't pick that up. It was Oven Johnson who smurfed on the champion last weekend, and Murk banned it last game, pick it up this time. They don't want to let the BBC solo carries have it. So they're just going to pick up the safe late game scaling mid laner, and it seems like Murk Nimbus are going for the complete opposite comp, a completely opposite comp from last game stylistically.
Yeah, rather than trying to get an early game advantage that they think they can close out, they're going 100% for the end game. So, but that Nunu actually being a Kled, what I think we're going to see is now it's kind of on big black clocks to get that early advantage and find a way to push it. Talia, who was a very solid pick on the electrocute last week against Handsome Esports, they want to be able to close this game out pre 30 minutes. Murk Nimbus, however, a lot of people see this sort of composition. They'll see the Vladimir, they'll know it's a Zyra Rakan, and they'll say, oh, that's a late game composition. But these champions are pretty strong all game. The difference between them and traditional late game champions is it's not as if they need a specific item to come online and be able to contribute. They always deal damage, they always contribute and dominate teams. It's just at end game they become 1 versus 5.
And Murk Nimbus seem to be picking up another more macro team fight oriented top laner, Shen. His presence will be able to be felt across the map even more than Gled's, to be honest, if Gled doesn't get ahead. Shen, just your standard tank, will always be useful, but something that I do want to bring up is how BBC are going to have to get an early lead, even more so than last game. Kha'Zix, Gled, Talia, these are picks who need to get ahead early and snowball. So if BBC perform a similar game plan from last time, where they managed to just, after around 10-15 minutes, show Murk Nimbus a masterclass in translating from early to mid game, I expect this to be their win. But if they don't, Murk Nimbus have the tools to choke them out through the entire game.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see how this bot lane matchup goes this time around. We did not see Smurf Ginger really dominate on that Varus pick, but we've always seen Thereby also pull whatever he needs to out of that hat of his when it comes to his Nautilus play. And so being able to see how this bot